Okay, we are back to Mishlei after a month or so, give or take, and we are almost done with chapter 16. So we're up to 1630, which I think is part of the series we were doing, but as we usually do, we'll take this on its own and then look at the previous pasukim later. Okay, Otse einav lachshov tapuchos, choritz sfasav kila ra'ah. Not the easiest pasuk to translate. Who would like to try?
Um, one with closed eyes. Is that what?
Yeah, so we're gonna go with so this is gonna be a big machlokas here, by the way, is Otse Inav. I think the pshat is what this dictionary says is to shut his eyes. One who I'm gonna say one who closes his eyes just to keep it in present tense.
Okay. Um, Two or considers. Ooh, we have perversities here.
Yeah. Yeah. To okay, we're gonna have
Word,
a
right?
lot of translations for this one. Okay, so to um you said consider, right? I'm just trying to think if that's the most broad one. Uh, yeah, let's say I'm gonna go ahead and go with to think, okay, just because I think that's the broadest of the possible definitions here. So think, consider, okay, plot or plan. I think those are probably the most usual ones. Okay, and then tapuchos is so if you remember, we had earlier two psukim ago, um, ish tapuchos yishalach madon. So we said tapuchos is literally reversals or perversities or duplicities. Okay, so let's use those again. Okay, so to plan uh tapuchos, okay, which is um uh re literally reversals, okay, or duplicities or perversities. Okay. Okay, let me delete these here. All right, so chorates. So anyone know what the usual translation of chorates is? So usually what you find, in fact, let's just do a little, I forgot to open up Al Torah. Let's just do a little test here. I believe when you see the word chorates as a verb, then usually it is followed by enav. Let's see here, 16 chorates. Chorates. Okay, so let's see I don't even know how common it is. Oh, not so common. All right, so let's just look at all of them then. So we have al yismuchu li oivai sheker sonai chinam uh yikrutsu ayin. Okay, I don't know exactly how to punctuate that, but yikrutsu ayin to blank their eyes. Koritz be'enav molel baraglav. Koritz ayin yitin atzaves. Then ours is koritz sfasav. And then the last one, I'm not even sure if that applies here. So it usually means to wink. Okay. This one says to pinch or to nip because I guess when you close your eyes, you like, close them, right? Like close them together really quickly. Pinch your eyes is a little weird. Yeah. Okay. So, um,
Purses his lips.
yeah, what do you say?
Purses his lips.
Yeah,
Like
versus his lips is a good one. His lips. Okay. And then kila, if you had to guess what kila meant before I show you what the dictionary says,
embarrassment.
that would be klima with a mem. And I think the mem is part of I think the mem is part of the shoresh.
So maybe like everything is my other guess.
Okay, so that's a good guess. I'll give you another hint. Not just you, anyone can answer this. Is we say this every multiple times every week on Shabbos, or a word that has this in it that comes from the same shoresh.
Is it like finish or something?
Yes, it means to finish, right? Okay, so that's like to be complete at an end, finish complete. So vaychulu hashemayim v'haaretz v'kol tzava'am, and the heaven and the earth and all the way was complete. Okay, so kila ra'a. So that's in the past tense. So how would you translate that?
Was completely harmful. I don't know.
Yeah, so I would say so. There is a translator who says what you said, but I would say just if kila means to finish and ra means evil, has completed evil, okay, or completed or finished evil, okay. let's just, I'm going to put the transliteration here so we can see it. Kila, yeah, evil. And then I'll do what I usually do here with Ra'a is badness, evil, or harm. Okay, so one who closes his eyes to think, consider, plot, or plan tahpuchos, reversals, duplicities, perversities, purses his lips. You may want to add, by the way, here, oh, that's not going to look nice. Hold on. You may want to add an and. Okay, and has kila ra'a. Sorry, no, not and there. And purses his lips. Has kila ra'a. Has completed evil. Okay, let's see what the other translators say. Okay, so here we have ציון says otze is inyan stima. So otze, he says, means to close. Kamo v'yatem es einechem. A lot of the meforshim quote this pasuk in Yeshayahu. They close their eyes. So the problem with this is that there's no mem here. Okay, so that's why everyone has a little difficulty here. Koretz is inyan nidnud l'rames kamo koretz be'enav. So he says that koretz does not mean to purse, but it means to motion. Okay, so you could say purses his lips. Hold on a second. And koretz is either purses or signals with his lips. Okay, so I don't know if there's a good word in English that means both wink, like that you use for your, I guess signal is the best one. You can signal with your eyes or with your mouth, with some sort of like motion. And then kila is in kamar v'hashlama is to complete or to finish, or to perfect. Perfect. Okay. All right. Now Malbim has a different thing. And by the way, if you see this without the vowels, etza. Okay, so it looks like etza. So he says it's kamo iatza alecha einai. Shemarames be'enav kilu miyaitz. So he says, oops, sorry. The Malbim says that it means to advise with one's eyes. Okay, so one who closes his eyes, let's see, one who otze is either closes or advises with his eyes. Okay, this is a very, very convoluted thing here. Yeah, I'll sort it out in a little while. Okay, so that's the Malbim. And then the Targum Ksuvim, I just broke it down with ChatGPT here. So he gestured, so Ramas be'ainoi v'chashiv hafichasa. I think that's just a literal translation. Gazim b'sifavase v'gamar bishasa. Gazim is the only one that I think might not be literal, is to cut or to express. Yeah, so I don't exactly know how he's learning Koretz here, so I'm just going to kind of ignore it here. We have enough on our plate. Okay, Art Scroll says, one who shuts his eyes to think of duplicity and signals with his lips has consummated evil. Okay, consummated is an interesting one. So it means to complete, but it's got kind of a I don't know. You can consummate a relationship or consummate a plan. I don't know. Yeah, I guess Art School is trying to link it with the thoughts. Refer says he narrows his eyes to devise wrong actions, crooks his lips, and the evil is completed. That's an interesting one. And then Alter says he closes his eyes, plotting perversions, purses his lips, and fixes on evil. So he learns it. I don't know how he learns kala ra'a. And maybe that he is like entirely devoted to evil. And then Alter comments here. He says, though there's some debate about the meaning of this verse, the likely intention is simply a kind of caricature of the wicked man who exhibits these facial gestures as he plots evil. Okay, that's his take. That's not really explaining it, but that's just trying to like give a sense. The received text shows otse, which is not a comprehensible word. Okay, that's the problem people face for closes, but the widely accepted emendation of otsem yields the ordinary Hebrew verb for closing the eyes. Okay, what I'm going to do is, because our translation is so complicated and because these English ones are so different, I'm going to go ahead and just paste all of these into the chat. So now you have all of them. Yeah. Okay, so what are the questions and problems? Yeah, Ayala.
What does it mean that he closes his eyes, and what is the significance of that? Like, why does that matter?
Yeah. What? I'm going to say, like, practically speaking. Okay, I don't want to say physically speaking because maybe it's not solely physical, but practically speaking, what does otse, what does it mean to otse his eyes? and what is the significance? Yeah, Isaiah.
I guess like what is the relationship between the facial gestures and the other parts of the pasuk?
Yeah, right. Okay, so what is the relationship between I like that, facial gestures, and so that's like that's the otse eyes and koret's lips, and the other parts, I guess the other uh, actions in the pasuk, which is the thinking, duplicity, thinking tapuchos, and then kila ra'a. Yeah. Yeah, Ella.
So what does kila ra mean? And if it's like completed or finished, like who started it? What exactly is the evil? I mean,
Okay,
that's
right.
a separate question actually. But.
Yeah, okay. So what is the ra'a in the pasuk? And then what does kila ra'a mean? If who started it? Why wasn't it complete until now? How does it become complete? Yeah, Isaiah?
It's actually Tamar. Is there
Oh, sorry.
anything? Yeah, I don't know if this is like, it's maybe not an essential question, but is there anything that we can learn from like the obscurity of some of the words in this pasuk?
Yeah, it's a good question. Stylistically, I don't know. I sometimes my intuition would be yes. But here I just think we might not know the words. I don't have any basis. I'll ask it anyway, in case something comes up. Is there anything we can learn from the obscurity of the words? Yeah. Next is my dad.
So when you're sitting at the poker table, you're looking at someone trying to figure out what their strategy is and what they have.
Yeah.
You pick up tells. Sometimes in this situation, I'm wondering, does the person know that he's
Oh, that's a good question.
these visual signals with his lips and his eyes?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question. So I'm gonna ask that with two qualities here. Okay, is this person making these facial gestures uh
Purposely or
purposely, I guess, like consciously?
yeah.
No, I think I'm struggling between purposely and without intention, and then conscious or unconscious. Hold on a second. So I'll say intentionally or unintentionally. And if the latter, is he conscious of them, or is he unaware? All right, I think those are the two.
Thinking of people rolling their eyes.
Yeah, right. That'd be a good example. Right. Some people roll their eyes intentionally, some people do it unintentionally, and some people, when they do it unintentionally, like they don't plan to do it, but then when they do it, they're aware. Other people don't even realize they're doing it. So those are the four, or the three categories. Yeah. Okay, Isaiah or Tamar?
Yeah. So is this pasuk to be read that like the Ota Einav and the Koretz Vasav is like definitely one person? Or like could you read
Yeah.
the first half of the pasuk as being
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Otse inav lakshov tapuchos. Okay, yeah, that's a fair question. Okay, so uh are the Otse Einav and Koretz, is it Bisvasav? No, it's just Svasav. The same person or two different people? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Alex.
I'm curious if it requires an audience to be bad, or if you like doing facial expressions by yourself itself is inherently
Okay,
bad.
that's a good question also. Okay, so is there another person involved here? For example, an audience or a victim. Okay, I don't know what's the best way to portray this. Yeah. Ayala was asking this, right? I just want to spell out this question. What's the relationship between the facial gestures and the other actions? So in other words, is one causally related or necessary for the other? And if so, how? Yeah, Ayala?
I don't think we asked, but what exactly are the tapuchot?
No, you're right. We didn't ask that. Yeah. What are the, or what does tapuchos mean in this context? Right. I kind of also want to ask, so what? So what? Like, is kila ra'a the consequence? Or is it part of the description of what he is doing, and the pasuk expects us to, infer the consequence that we should care about? Yeah, Alex?
I'm also curious if there's an element of like midot that's here, or if it's like actually this action is just bad.
Yeah, right. That's a good question also. Okay, so let's actually ask. Okay, well, let's do this. We usually do the. Okay, well, first of all, we'll ask, what is the subject of this pasuk? But then we'll ask, I don't know why I don't usually ask it this way, but who is the subject of this pasuk? Okay, is it a specific kind of person or mishleic, like slash mishleic archetype, or is it anyone? And this, set of actions itself is bad. Yeah, Isaiah?
Tomorrow again.
Yeah.
I think you can also separately ask who is the audience in terms of their relationship to the people who are doing this.
Yeah. Who is the audience? I'll say who's the audience. And then is the audience someone who is inclined to do the actions in this pasuk, or is it someone who might be on the receiving end of this evil? I also want to add to Isaiah's question about the two people here. Same person, different people is and either way, maybe this should be a different question. I'll just put it here anyway. Is this pasuk true if only one of the two activities is done? Let's say you close your eyes to think duplicities, but you don't do this thing with your lips, or vice versa. Okay, one other question is going to come from the context. So it's been like a month. So let's just quickly look at the context here. Okay, so we have I didn't realize these are different sizes, or are they? No, they're not. Okay, that's why I didn't realize it, because it's not true. All right. So we had these good psukim here about using your intelligence in decision making and in speech, and then we switched, and then we had this middle pasuk, which was about split paths, and then we started going into negative psukim. So we had nefesh amel amla lo ki alkaf pihu alav pihu. A toiling soul has toil when his mouth bends over him, or whatever that means. Then we had the bad guys. Ish blial kore ra. The alsfaso keish tsaravis. A lawless man plots evil, and on his lips is a burning firebrand. Ish tapuchos yishalach madon v'nirgan mafrid aluf. A duplicitous man causes strife, and a complainer alienates a leader. Ish chamas yifate re'ehu v'holicho b'derech lo tov. A violent man seduces his fellow and leads him on a not good path. And then ota inav lachshav machshavos koretz sfasav kila ra'a. However we want to translate this, one who closes his eyes to, I'm just going to do the one that jumps to my mind, to plot duplicities, who signals with his lips, he has completed evil. So the question is, what's the relationship between this and the previous psukim? Now, I think that there may be a relationship because it's also a bad guy. These other bad guys are doing evil, and then the tapuchos seems to be, it's not an accident that you have two tapuchos psukim so close together. Okay, so the question is, what, if anything, is the relationship between this pasuk and those that preceded it? Okay. feel like that is the Isaiah or tomorrow.
Yeah, just like someone who closes their eyes.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you learn it as plot or plan, then wouldn't it be weird to like close your eyes to plan something? Like usually you have to be more aware in order to plan things. Like closing your eyes is like taking it away.
I guess it depends on when you're doing it, right? Like we do sometimes close our eyes to think.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I guess that'll be a I'll just add why does he do this? And yeah, let's say why does he do this? Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna start transporting the questions into the chat. See how many, I think we need 3 trips maybe. There's 1. Oh no, two should be fine. Yeah, okay, we got it. All right. There's 8, this is 9. Yeah, Ayala.
Just another question about the audience.
Yeah.
If there is an audience or whatever, do they know, or if somebody sees him, do they know what he's doing? Like why he's closing his eyes and pursing his lips?
Sure,
Like
I'll
to
add
plot
that.
evil?
Yeah. And then does the audience, oops, 1 second. Does the audience know why he's doing this? Okay, and I will use that, and then I will tack that onto here. Okay. Okay, this is a tricky one. Let us take our thinking minute. Okay, I have an idea. I'm gonna go ahead and just move these translations up here, so we can have ours. Let me just see if I can make this shorter. Hold on. I'm gonna take out consider, Isaiah. No offense. I think because considers tapuas is a little too tame. Reversals. So these. Where's these? Okay. Yeah, Isaiah, you're up.
All right. So the way that I want to learn the pasuk is that someone who closes their eyes in order to like, I guess to plan, but it could also just be to think of, like plots or duplicities, I guess, or perversities, either one. So that's one thing, but it becomes real. They've completed the raw once it like reaches their mouth, which I'm learning to take as like once they do some kind of like signaling within like an external part of their body, that's like it's like they're like manifesting that this is a plan, that they're like going in some way, they're acting on it. If they're just thinking of the plan, it's not as real to them as if they've like even started to like start talking about it or like start signaling about it or like doing some kind, like I'm taking like signaling with his lips is like the smallest movement you can do with your body.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with this then. I think that's a good start here. So a bad guy, I'm just gonna call him a bad guy, can plot all the evil he wants, but it will remain internal. I guess it'll remain in his thoughts until he signals with his lips, which is the bare minimum, like minimal external manifestation. Okay. And that is when it can get set into motion. So first of all, before we develop this, is that an accurate summary of what you were saying?
Yeah, I guess that like, yeah, I think it's not just that's like when it can get set into motion, but it's not like a complete like raw in the sense that like he hasn't really like done a harmful thing until he has like started to do that.
Okay, so that's when he's acted on it, and it goes from being bad thoughts to a bad action. Yeah. Okay, so now the question I'd say is, so I think that's a good reading of the pasuk. So now the question is, so what, right? Like, what's the practical? Oh, we didn't ask what the practical application is. We did say so what about why we should care about it, but not what is the practical application. Yeah. So what's the practical application here? And this is a question for anyone, but I just want to know if Isaiah had an approach.
Well, what I think is that like if you see yourself like even just doing the slightest action towards like a plan that you would consider like an evil plan, then you are like you should be aware that you're like manifesting this evil plan into the world, and there can be negative consequences.
Okay. All right. So you're saying the audience is the person who is doing this,
Yeah.
right? Okay. And it's not necessarily a Russia, so I shouldn't say a bad guy. Right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay, yeah. Oh, I think not just I guess so. I guess so. I think like this warning is probably pertinent to people who are not Rishaim, because these are people who are going to entertain these thoughts but not necessarily act on them, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so the audience is the person who is engaging in these bad thoughts. Okay, he might tell himself that he's not in danger as long as he's just plotting. Okay, but the qualitative change occurs when he manifests it externally, because then he's going to trigger consequences in the external world. Okay, so this is like I think oh man, I'm just trying to think if I should quote this movie that I saw. No, I'm not going to. You can ask me if you want a good movie recommendation afterwards. I'll tell you. But I think a good example of this is people who are like, let's say you have someone who's married, and they're like looking at someone else's, you know, or at a woman who they're not married to, you know, or whatever. So obviously the Torah holds that that's going to be bad in general, but the Mishlei's concern is once you like, let's say like wink or signal or like give some sort of external flirtation, so then that can actually trigger stuff. And it could trigger stuff with the person, it could trigger stuff with people looking at you, but if it's in your thoughts, that's not necessarily going to do anything. You know, I think that's like a good example of this. Or another example is, just trying to think of another example here. I mean, I think in combat, I think this is another thing that like if you or let's say not just combat, war, some sort of like hostile environment, like if you are a spy or if you are going to like make a sneak attack, because you're gonna mug someone or whatever, you know, if it's just in your mind, then there's no consequences in the external war. But as soon as you signal it, then that's a then it has potential to set things into motion. So like the advice is to guard against doing this, and ideally to master your internal thoughts so that you don't even get close to doing this, you know. And again, I think it's a thing people say to themselves, is like, it's just, yeah, they're just thoughts, like I'm just daydreaming, I'm just, you know, like, but no, that's like that can lead you to make this mistake, you know. It's not just innocent planning or idle daydreaming. If it can like trigger real world consequences. Okay, any other contributions to this idea before we go to the next one?
Yeah, I have questions on this.
Sure.
And because I was thinking very, very similar to Isaiah.
Yeah.
You know, but I was a lot more focused on the Ra is for the individual, you know, himself. Now I think that's kind of like, I'm not sure if this is what you're saying.
I thought that's what Isaiah was saying. That
yeah,
means like, if I am plotting evil and as soon as I wink with my lips, So then it's as it, no, you should think of it as though I am bringing evil upon myself.
Right. So the question is, meaning, is it true that there will be real world consequences? That's the question that that's something I don't really understand. Like, I understand that there, it may be damaging to himself, and I still think that still needs to be explained, because I don't even know how that would even be damaging to himself,
Well, did you
because
hear all the examples I just gave?
yeah, I did, but I still don't see it. Meaning, just because he has, he purses his lips, I still don't see how that's going to affect anything. That's still kind of internal. Like, it's not.
No, it's not. That's the thing. It's external because you're doing it. You're doing an action, right? So let's take the example of the flirtation, right? Like if a guy like there's a statement that the non-Jews say, a proverb from the non-Jews. What's the statement about, like, nothing wrong with looking at the menu or something like that? Like, like you're just looking, but if you so they may tell themselves that, but if you are following a woman with your gaze and someone sees that, or she sees that, or your spouse sees that, that is not just internal, that's external.
Yeah, but is that the same as pursing your lips?
Don't get caught up on pursing your lips. Signaling with your lips is what Isaiah was saying. So it's any sort of Isaiah, you were taking that as lav davka, like not specifically lips. You're saying like any sort of like signal that you do.
Yeah, lips. Lips is the minimal here.
Yeah, right.
All right, so then my idea might be a little different, because I kind of want to say that it's I want to say pursing your lips, because it's very, very subtle. It's not like you're actually signaling to the world. I want to say it's more internal. It's more
Okay, so
just
I'll
damaging
hold off on yours
yourself.
for 1 second. I think Isaiah wanted to add something to his own. Yeah, Isaiah?
Yeah, actually, this
Or
time
Kumar,
it's
yeah.
yeah. I was just wondering, maybe thinking about the example that you gave, that maybe Otse Einav is actually like specifically like if the person is fantasizing about something, that's an occasion to close your eyes to think.
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing also. Yeah.
Yeah, just noticing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna just go ahead and note this. We'll develop it later, but I just want to put this on the thing here, which is this is Tamar, and then this is me. We'll see if it splits into two different ideas, but he's closing his eyes in order to fantasize. Okay, fine. All right, so now let's go to okay, so I'm happy with this idea. Anyone else want anything? Okay, so let's go to Ariel now. All right, so Ariel, you wanted to say
Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be very similar to Isaiah's, like the starting point.
okay, sure.
I
So
want to say that when you're closing your eyes, you're kind of already thinking about like what you want to do. Like, you're thinking, let's say someone wronged you, or like let's say someone, I don't know, did something to you. Like, you are already plotting like what you want to do to this guy, and like the thing is that that's still in your thoughts. That's not like it's still not out there in the world. But I want to use the term purses your lips, because you're not really it's not really out there in the world. But pursing your lips, it's not noticeable, but it's only noticeable to I think it's only noticeable to yourself. I think that once you make some sort of physical expression, which you thought about, that brings it out into the world, but not so much that it's going to damage
okay.
the world. It's going to damage yourself, of who you are. It's going to deviate from you as an individual, from from having pure thoughts, which will lead into pure actions.
Right.
It's not that, oh, there are physical consequences of, oh, you gazing at the woman. It's more like, no, it's like you're destroying yourself as an individual.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is fair for Shlomo Melech, but in terms of your idea, would you say that clenching your fists, like in a way that no one can see it, like would that be like the same kind of thing? Like you're expressing it.
I think so. I think so,
Yeah.
because I think that is an outcome of you not being able to control your emotions, your anger. And yes, it's definitely a lot better than punching the guy in the face,
Yeah.
but it's still not, it's still not. But the question is like, are we really gonna call him a bad guy though? And I think Ra here means that you're completing, there are different stages of wickedness. I think maybe like if you punch a guy in the face, yeah, you have, done the action of hitting the guy in the face, but I think this is like the first step to, to going on the track of real richness where like it's your mind, then like your first physical expression that is Ra, that is in itself wicked, but it's not like you're actually, it's like a different, it's like the first stages of Ra, first level
Yeah,
of
right.
Ra.
Right. Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
this is a good idea as well. I just want to think about it a little bit more here. Right, because what we would say is if you have a choice between acting on it, against the person versus like taking it out, punching a punching bag or whatever, we would say that channeling it is better, but but it still is a warning sign. Like if you're at the point where you need to like outlet this, then that still should give you feedback that like this is bubbling to the surface, and it
Yeah,
could bubble.
definitely.
Right. So then it was like this gives you feedback that your anger is bubbling to the surface, and therefore you need to be on guard because it might come out in ways you don't expect. So like yours is like it's in line with Isaiah's idea, but it's like the precursor to what Isaiah is saying. In other words, Isaiah is saying like there's several levels, right? First one is just having the thoughts. That itself should be warning. Okay, but that's not necessarily going to like affect anything. Everyone has thoughts. But then if it's expressing itself in like physicality, then you should think to yourself, uh-oh, like I might express this in a way that's physical that is harmful. And then Isaiah is like, oh, if someone sees me express it, that could actually like affect things. And then that could actually, and then the bigger levels when you actually lose control of your emotions. Okay, that's good. I like that pairing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, anyone want to say anything on this? Okay, let's go to my dad next before we develop mine. Yeah.
No, I'm looking at this in a somewhat simplistic way. We're talking about nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about nonverbal communication as a way to anticipate evil,
Okay.
and that this pasuk may be talking from the standpoint of a potential victim, of things to look out for
Mm.
that normally are not obvious, but subtle nonverbal communication or just non-communication in general. These may be specific examples of it, may be helpful in anticipating evil and being a victim.
Okay. Which is a warning sign about evil that could come to you. Yeah, I'll tell you what I keep thinking about here. And this is maybe not related directly to what the pasuk is saying, but I don't know if anyone's I'm not even gonna Google search it yet until I tell you the case. So Joseph Goebbels, who was like the propaganda minister for Hitler, right? So there was a case where there was a photographer who was taking like professional pictures of him, and then I don't know if the guy tells him or if Goebbels finds out that the guy is Jewish, and he like gives him this death stare. How do you spell Goebbels? Stare. Yeah. And to me, that's like the if you get the before and after. Here we go. So this was on the left is before, and then just this absolute like death stare, and like if you see someone doing something like that, like you could tell that they want to kill you, So now this is the reason why I say this might not be like what the pasuk is talking about, because it does sound like our pasuk is more subtle than this. And look, like other stuff was going on at the time. Like this guy's talking to him, and he's just like, But I feel like that's the kind of thing like you should be, have a heightened sense of awareness to look for things like this. Yeah.
in ways that are unusual. I mean, usually it's overt behavior and overt speech. This is something much more subtle.
Right. In other words, don't look for overt behavior as the sole signal of malintent. Be on the lookout for the more subtle forms. Yeah, I'm sure there are better examples of this also. If anyone has an example, feel free to chime in with that. Yeah. I saw you do the party thing. Was that on the last idea or on I didn't
I have a separate idea now.
a separate idea. Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
I think this is a good track also. Anyone want to add anything to this? Okay. So let's go really quickly to Tamar. Tamar, did you I know you said it was an observation. Did you have an approach that you wanted to develop from that? Because I do, but I want to hear yours first if you do.
I didn't. I was kind of thinking of it as fitting into Isaiah's idea, but I didn't have further thing.
Okay, yeah. That it's possible it fits into multiple ideas. All right, fine. So I'll hold off on mine for a second. I'll just move this down. Yeah, Ariel, what do you have?
Oh, that was it from before.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, okay. And then I don't know if my dad's signal is also from before. Okay, so Ayala, what do you want to say?
I was gonna say that maybe this could be talking about a psychological phenomenon that both like once you're thinking about it and like closing your eyes, and I wasn't necessarily gonna say fantasizing about it, but like plotting it out and like doing any sort of action that or like that follows that, you're kind of giving in psychologically to the desire, which will grow it. And like even though you may think like, oh, I'm not actually doing something, but like this is like, I don't know the word, but it's like kind of feeding the desire, and it is giving into the desire.
Sure. Did you take a stance on what the Koretz Fasav means? I just missed it.
I was saying similarly to other people of just like any physical behavior.
Okay, or engage in some physical behavior.
I don't think this is a completely different idea.
Right, right. So that is feeding it, and that can give it more power. So the practical advice is to refrain from doing either of these categories of behavior so as not to feed it. Yeah, so it is an interesting thing. Yeah, I do think this fits in really well with this is like the prior step that I was saying for Ariel, right? So in other words, I'm just going to summarize this here in my own way. I'm going to put this where it was in the statement. Oops, hold on. Okay, so in other words, so let me just do summary of the levels. Okay, so you have level 1, which is let's call this yellow. Okay, let's call this I want to go yellow, orange, red, and then like is it what would be in between here? Blood red. Okay. So yellow is you're thinking these oh no, let's do hold on a second here. Let's just do normal. Okay. So you're thinking idle thoughts. Okay, yellow, so this corresponds to Ayala's idea, is you invest energy in that fantasizing, or sorry, in that thinking by closing your eyes. I'll say either for fantasy or concentration. Okay, I think those are two like things. Or by closing your eyes, or engaging in some manifestation, subtle behavior. Okay. Orange is Ariel, is you like see, Ariel's overlaps with Ayala's behaviorally, but the level Ariel is saying is like you lose control of your ability to not do that. Okay. And then Isaiah's is that you actually manifest it in a manner that is noticeable to others, and then blood red is you act on it overtly. Okay, so I don't know if these are all the steps, but I think that's I think looking at it as a spectrum is a good way to unify the ideas. Okay, I had a completely different approach here. I haven't developed this entirely yet, but here's what I want to say. Let me just talk it out first. Okay, so what I want to say is I was thinking that closing your eyes is fantasizing, and then I do think this is talking to a Russia. I don't think this is talking about an average person. And the reason why I say that is because all these people who we talked about here are really bad people. Okay. So I think this is not just talking about the average person. So this is talking about these bad people. And one of the features of these bad people is that once they fantasize and co-conspire, even just hinting to someone else, who's in on it, then they feel like they've already accomplished the evil that they're trying to accomplish. There's a part of them that feels like I've done it already. So I think this is an example of, I don't think we have a good category for this, but there is a category of pasukim in Mishlei where Mishlei is expressing a falsehood that is believed on some level by the fool. So in other words, when it says he has completed evil, I think that's how he feels. That's not actually true in reality. Okay, so the idea is that with people who are truly evil, okay, they are so caught up in their egocentric, power-seeking orientation that merely by fantasizing and signaling their intent, they will feel on some level as though they have already succeeded in their evil. Okay, so this is a good example of this. I mean, do you have any examples of this in Tanakh that come to mind? Yeah, Isaiah?
I mean, it's not a specific thing in Tanakh, but to me this
Sure.
sounds like Avodah Zarah.
Oh yes, this is definitely an Avodah Zarah type thing. My thoughts actually control reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking Haman.
Yeah, Haman's a perfect example, right? Is he brags to, he brags to his family, but then he constructs the gallows, okay, and and rushes to Achashverosh. And you can tell from the way he carries himself that even though he hasn't even asked Achashverosh yet, but because he plotted this with people, and and then when he is talking to Achashverosh, he feels like this is a done deal, so Haman, who primarily engaged in fantasy and communicating his intent. It doesn't fit cleanly into the pasuk, but I think it is still a good example. His intent felt like it was a done deal, and that Mordecai had already been and Mordecai had already been eliminated. So I think that's the emotion that I'm striving for. I'm trying to think if there's another example of this that we could have. I mean, what I'm thinking of, I don't have a particular in mind, but the power hungry general or leader who's so confident in his own victory that just just by saying kill them, then he feels like he's already done it, because he's so, in his mind, the signal and the planning is so immediately translated into reality that's he feels like he's already done it. Okay, I'll say, or
I'll stop the war in Ukraine on day one.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, or a stereotypical villainous leader who thinks he has defeated the hero simply by dispatching the order. Yeah. I wish I had a good example of that, but none's coming to mind right now. Yeah, Isaiah?
Maybe we just have you just haven't explained this part of your idea, but I'm not saying what's the decision making advice in just knowing that this is something that
right. So I think that the so what's the practical application? Okay, is this is for people, for the would-be victim or the one who wants to thwart the Russia's plans. Okay, they should count on him lowering his guard because he feels like he's already won, and that's where his weak spot will be. Yeah. And it's interesting because on the way up, as the Russia is climbing the ranks, he's very good at not falling into this trap because he knows what he needs to do to get there, but then he loses sight and gets caught up in his own ego when he's towards the top. Yeah. Okay, let's look at some meforshim here. So I actually did have time to run all the meforshim through ChatGPT except for the ones that we usually do. So I want to translate that myself. So מצודת, I haven't looked at this yet. מצodat, it says Ote Hasosam einav lachshov lahapech amarim. Oh, that's very different than what we said. So one who closes his eyes to plan how to reverse statements. Ki derech hama'amik lachshov ma yistom az einav leval yibablu oso dvarim hanirim. Okay, so he says because one who thinks deeply will close his eyes so as not to get distracted. Yibablu is to be confused, but I think distracted is better by visual things. Okay, Koritz hamanadne bispas of l'ramas lashon hara. I don't know if this is an and or an or, so I'll just say and or. One who signals. Hold on. There's a good term for this. See, he says hamanadne bispas of l'ramas lashon hara, who moves with his lips to allude to lashon hara. I'm trying to think what he's talking about here. Like, I'm wondering if he even means like uses innuendo, like I'll say who hints at lashon hara, like maybe like mouths something, hints at lashon hara with his lips. I'll just say that. Okay. Kila ra, hine ze gemar hara. Behold, this is the culmination of evil. Asher Machshavah Lab, of the evil he plotted. He ramza v'asamaisa, since he hinted and did an action. Okay, so what is he saying here? So let's just get the factual summary here, and then the idea. So how is he reading the pasuk? Actually, I think pervert is probably a better thing than reverse. Pervert, distort statements. So it's talking about a Baal Lashon Hara, right? Someone who is I guess a Baal Lashon Hara or a gossiper. Not a gossiper, a Baal Lashon Hara, right? Or just say someone, and it doesn't have to be Baal Lashon Hara, but someone who speaks, who wants to speak Lashon Hara, right? He thinks about how to distort what someone said and how to convey his distorted report to others. Once he's done that, then he has done a complete act of lashon hara. And I think the chiddush is, even though he hasn't overtly said anything. Okay, I think that's like that's the idea here, right? Is that this is actually, I don't know how seriously he's taking this, but this is this definitely at least falls into a category of avak lashon hara, which let's just review that really quickly here. So there's the isser of lashon hara, which is to speak something negative and true, and there's avak lashon hara, meaning the dust of lashon hara, which is indirect forms of lashon hara. So he says, I guess it doesn't fit squarely into it. Fine, but I'll just say it was at least a form of lashon hara, if not outright lashon hara. Yeah. So what's the so I think is that a good factual reading, or anyone have any problems with that factual reading? Yeah, Isaiah.
I wasn't sure that the first person, the Otse, I forgot the word, but like that he's doing that he's planning to distort late statements regarding lashon hara, or if that's just he has a plot and he had something in mind and he's thinking about how to distort statements.
Well, he says lachshav lahafech amarim, to reverse statements.
Right.
Reverse statements. And I think he's getting that from the pasukim earlier.
Right,
Madon. So this is the guy who, like, actually, I think let's go back to that pasuk really quickly, because I think the Mitzvah David might be consistent here. Is that 28? Let's see what he says. Mitzvah David. A man reverses one who reverses statements from how they were originally said, provokes quarrels among people, and a complainer who complains about people's actions causes separation between people and the person in charge of them, for they will rebel against him, and the person in charge will also become their enemy. Right. So I think he's being consistent with the ish tapuchos here. So the guy's like trying to start up trouble by like misrepresenting what people said in a way that's going to cause problems. Okay, I have to recommend this movie. Hold on, I'm gonna pause the recording. Okay, back to here. So what's the main idea? I feel like it's possible that this could be like fit into Isaiah's idea, even though it's a different subject. But I'm not sure. I mean, there's already a problem with lashon hara, because I mean, there's a lot of problems. There's a problem that people don't feel like lashon hara is an avera because they think to themselves, "Oh, I'm only talking," you know. So kal v'chomer, if you're not even talking, you know, kal v'chomer, if you have no, it was like this. Lashon hara, the essence of lashon hara is in the thoughts and the communication, however that occurs. So if you are plotting a way to like start up trouble by speaking badly about someone or by sowing the seeds of quarrel, and you just hint at it, you cannot excuse yourself by saying, "Oh, I didn't actually say anything." You know, it is a like in other words, like an eye roll can be as devastating as full-blown lashon hara, full-blown like smear campaign. You know, so I think that's probably the best candidate here is that lashon hara already feels like you're not really doing anything, but just talking. Okay, kal v'chomer, if you don't even say anything, but just hint. Okay, the chiddush is that the essence of lashon hara is in the thoughts and the communication. You know, not the verbal content, not the verbal content itself. Okay, so once you have those two components, i.e., a negative distortion of someone's figuring out, that's the thinking, a negative distortion, a negative way to distort someone else's speech, okay, which I think really fits even into rechilos, okay, because lashon hara doesn't have to be about their speech, and you communicate it even in the most subtle way, then that is a full act of lashon hara. And even though you don't say anything outright, and all the consequences of lashon hara in other pasukim will apply to you. Okay, so I think that's the chiddush there. So it's more of an emotional chiddush, but it is showing the lowest threshold for lashon hara and targeting a rationalization that person might make about speaking lashon hara. And again, look, I mean, I you know, not to be stereotypical, but like I teach in a high school, and high schoolers do this all the time. You know, like they signal to each other, you know, about like, you know, usually speaking lashon hara about a classmate or about the teacher, you know, and that is lashon hara, even though they don't say anything. Yeah. Okay. Any questions or comments on this? All right, let's do Rabinu Yona, short Rabinu Yona here. Ote einav lakshav matapus kol kach davak bal hachemda v'taiva b'midaso. So the covetous and bal taiva and like I'm gonna say hedonistic. I don't know if that's the best word for bal taiva. Hedonistic or like lustful person is so attached to his midah ad shifati re'ehu, that he seduces or entices, we say, I think, entices his fellow, v'yimshoch acharav kol adam, and draws every person after him. I think that's what we said in the last one, right? That was the last pasuk was ish chamas yifati re'ehu v'holichu b'derech lo tov. A violent man seduces his fellow and leads him on a not good path. So I don't remember how Rabinu Yona learned it, and if we need to, we'll look back. But for now, the ad shi'avid evarav l'shamish tavaso v'lo ka'alos machshavas hachamas al libo levad yechos ba lahagia al poal. That's a complicated sentence. Ad shi'avid evarav l'shamish tavaso v'lo ka'alos machshavas hachamas al libo levad yechos ba lahagia al poal aval otzehu es enav lachshav tapuhos b'koris vasav kasher gamar machshavta hara v'niskam aleha. Okay, I think what he means is this occurs not just when he utilizes his limbs to serve his desire, nor when the thought of, I don't know why I say Hamas is taiva or chemda, but that's, I guess, how he's saying it, arises in his mind. But even when he closes his eyes to think tapuchos and is koretz be'enav kasher gamar machshavto hara. Yeah, I don't know what he's saying. I'm just gonna use ChatGPT and translate for 1 second just to see what it says. ChatGPT, please translate Rabinu Yona's commentary on Mishlei 1630. So deeply is the person who is dominated by desire and craving attached to his trait and his lust that he entices his fellow and draws every person after him. He even enslaves his limbs to serve his craving, and not only does the thought of violence arise in his heart without action, but he seizes upon it in order to bring it into actuality. He closes his eyes to plot deceptions and pinches his lips once he has finalized the evil thought and resolved upon it. So what is he saying? What is he saying here? I'm gonna say purses his lips. It's almost like our pasuk is an afterthought here, but that's what I'm having a hard time with here. I mean, one thing that he's saying is that it may look like the Baal Taiva is in control, but really he's such a slave to his own lusts that he can't control his thoughts and actions, and will end up plotting ways to satisfy his desires and, you know, entice others to his cause, even without, without like deciding to do so. It's like he can't help himself. Right. So the question is, I mean, a good example of this, I think, is, I mean, I don't know for a fact that this happens, but I gotta imagine that in certain drug cultures, then people who are addicted are so they're certainly enslaved by their own actions and their preoccupation with their thoughts about how to get the next hit, but I'm sure they draw other people in with them. I mean, that is what happens with the, like, factually, that's what happens with addicts, is that they do, draw people who are prone to addiction into their circle. So the question is, what's the idea here? I mean, it feels like a misplaced idea. It feels like it's using the words in our pasuk, but his focus is not really to like help us understand our pasuk. I'm not really sure. Okay, let's leave this one. All right, I want to do so from here on out is translated with ChatGPT, which I have not checked yet. I kind of want to do our buddy. Oh no, yeah, I want to do Rav Sheshes ben Yitzchak Gorondi. So he says like this: Achar shehizkir ele shlosha nizkarim. After mentioning these three people who were mentioned, asher ein roy lekabel eitza mehem, who it's not proper to accept advice from. Okay, so he's taking it as just going back to our psukim up here. So he said, so I guess he's taking this from the fact that these other psukim above were about advice. So he's saying these are three guys, the ish, the ish blial, the ish tapuchot, and the ish chamas, that you should not take advice from. Okay, so after mentioning, hold on, these three types of people that is not proper to accept advice from, hizkir ata hatam lekulam. It mentions the reason for all of them as one. And also all other people who are degenerate and base people. Biomar, he says, Kimishu otse enav, someone who is otse enav, klomar shu malim enav min hadvarim haruim lasos. So he hides his eyes from things that are proper to do, v'choshev tapuchos, and then thinks duplicities. Klomar shahulech be'enav be'inyanav achar ha'hofchim v'hadvarim hagurim. He conducts his affairs by following what's perverted and bad. Choretz be'enav kila ra'ah. Klomar kasher yiftach sfasav b'davar etza. So when that type of person opens his lips to give advice, be'emes ki kala ra. You should know, teda be'emes ki kala ra. You should know with certainty that that is complete evil. Klomar lo yitein ki'im etza ra, meaning he's only going to give bad advice. Ki kol yoetz lefi dato, because anyone who gives advice gives according to his own das, his own mentality, lefi tivon, according to his nature. Ki etza torah al hayoetosa, because the advice reflects or points to the person who advises. Al kain, therefore, ein roy la'ela shlosha asher hizkir lavo besod ha'etza v'lidrosham bifneim. Therefore, it is not proper for these three people to come into the secret council of advice and for you to expound in front of them. Ki kasher lo yashara machshavosam kain lo tova atazim, because just as their thoughts are not upright, so too their advice is not good. Okay, then he gives another theory about how to read it. V'etza kamo otzem. Oh, so and etza comes from the word otzem. Oh, ne'emar ki etza yautz. Okay, or it comes from etza does come. Otza comes from yautz, from advice. Even though they're not from the same shorish, ki kvar nimtzu al shnei hashorashim kamo utzu etza. We do see this form of it being taken. V'hi shorish echad etza. Yomar ki mishu yoetz klomer be'inyanim shelo, someone who advises, meaning in his own affairs, choshev tapuchos. Klomer be'inyanim shelo choshev tapuchos ve'ino holech ki'im achar ha'hefech. What does it say? One who advises, who in his affairs devises perversion and follows only what is crooked. Choretz svasav kila ra'a. Klomer kshu posech svasav be'inyan etza be'emes lo yiten ki'im etza ra. When he opens his mouth to give advice, then it's only going to be bad advice. Both of these readings go with the same meaning. I'm sorry, Harisham, but you need the first one. Okay, fine. Yeah, all right. So the factual summary here. Factual summary is, after telling us about three Mishlei personalities not to get advice from, Shlomo explains the reason. Advice is inevitably tainted by the nature and thoughts of the person who gives it. Therefore, do not rely on the advice of any degenerate person, degenerate person, no matter how good their advice seems. You can't guarantee that you'll separate the advice from the advisor, the advice giver. So don't even expose yourself to it. Okay. And I say you can't guarantee because clearly it is possible for them to give good advice. Like you can have someone who is, like a horrible person in terms of their interpersonal relationships, but they're a good accountant, and they'll give you good accounting advice, So, so so what's the idea? I mean, I think it's pretty close to the summary here. Yeah, Ayala?
Be very careful who you take advice from.
Yeah. So be very, very careful who you take advice from. Okay. Noting that the person is as important, if not more, than the advice itself. Okay. I.e., ethos more important than logos. Okay, in terms of rhetorical categories. And the reason, so I guess let's say, don't underestimate the ability of a person's corrupt character to skew their advice in ways you can't even perceive. Yeah, Ella?
Don't we also say though that like Ezehu Chacham Halamei Mikol Adam?
Yeah, right.
And like
Okay,
that all advice is like you should, I don't know, you can hear and then decide.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's a great question. Okay, so don't we say Ezehu Chacham Halomed Mikol Adam, which is who is wise, one who learns from everyone. Okay, or Shema Ha'emes Mimi Sha'amro, listen to truth from whoever says it. Yeah, okay, good. So how would we answer that? I have an answer. Yeah, Ella?
Maybe like yes, but you really have to be wise in order to do that, because if not, then you very easily fall prey to getting influenced by other factors.
Okay.
Not being able to like really judge well the advice that they give you.
Yeah. So yes, but you really have to be careful when dealing with a corrupt person, and be wary of the fact that you might not be able to separate the fruit from the husk. Okay, as the Gemara says about Meir learning with Acher. Yeah, Isaiah.
I'm not sure this is a good answer, but like there is a difference between the
Your audio is really, really hard to hear.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Here. Okay. I think there's a difference between like the knowledge that a person's giving you and like the practical takeaway that they're giving to you. So like maybe the difference is like this is saying the spin that they're putting on the factual knowledge you shouldn't listen to. Like the advice that they're giving is bad, but the knowledge itself is knowledge. Like
right. Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna take a similar approach as well. Okay, so there's a difference between the knowledge they're giving, which you should listen to regardless of the source, and the advice they're giving, which this pasuk is warning you about. Okay, now the question is, what is the basis for that difference? Like, in other words, you could argue, isn't advice another form of knowledge? So like, why should advice not be subject to, if you can have objectivity in science, math, whatever, why can't you have that objectivity in advice? I don't know if Isaiah, if you're raising your hand anew or if that's from before. Yeah, Ayala?
I mean, I'm sure there are many reasons, but one is that it's a lot more relevant to your life. So I think it's a lot easier to be swayed by different emotional factors.
You're saying for the person who's giving it to be swayed by their own emotional factors?
No, sorry, for the person who's taking the advice in
Yeah.
and judging whether or not to listen to it.
Okay, so on the one hand, yes, but I feel like if in a lot of areas you're relying on knowledge as well, that can have big consequences, even though you're not taking it as advice.
What do you mean?
Like, let's say, for example, you have a doctor. Let's say you have a scientist, whatever, right? Let's say you have a scientist who is a bad person, but like, to use an extreme example, like, the Nazis in the concentration, Dr. Mengele or whatever, I've never heard anyone critique his ability as a doctor. They just say he was an evil person. But like, so let's say you have medical knowledge that came from that. So I still don't see like why if I'm relying on medical knowledge, I'm going to weigh it equally, whether it comes from a Mengele or whether it comes from like a normal doctor, right? Like,
well, I think somebody like the person who would be relying on medical knowledge is somebody, let's say, who's sick or in a very vulnerable position.
right.
So they may not be as thorough when they're like looking into whether or not to actually because you rely on the advice based off of its accuracy, not based off of the person who says it. So if you get advice from somebody who's like a fool, but you're like, okay, whatever, I can still take advice from them. I think like when you're asking for advice, it's very relevant to your life. So I feel like I don't know, like you may be a lot quicker to like take the medicine if you think it can help you, and like kind of be lazy about looking into it as you really should.
Okay, so you're already in I'm gonna quote unquote biased because you want a good result and sometimes vulnerable because you're in in need state, and that might make you less critical than you would be if evaluating if evaluating the knowledge in a vacuum. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Yeah, Isaiah?
I think another reason that like advice is more susceptible, I guess, is that like advice, the way people give advice is that they put themselves into
That's
like
exactly what I was thinking.
the shoes of the situation. So like this person lives his life in a certain way, so like he's going to give advice tainted on like how he lives his life.
Yeah. So I that's exactly what I was thinking. When someone gives advice, he puts himself in your shoes and tells you what he would do. Okay. That is where his values are going to creep in, which is not the case when both parties are just involved in the objective quest for knowledge, or actually not necessarily the case. Yeah. Yeah, right. So in other words, like again, I think relationships is a good example of this. Is like someone is let's say someone is a serial philanderer, and like, but they happen to be your friend, and you are talking about your relationship with that person. Okay. So obviously, when he's saying what I think you should do, he's going to put himself in your place. And because he's a philanderer, he doesn't care about like the trust and integrity and like and values like that, then those values are all going to creep into his advice, even if he thinks he's talking about your situation. So I think that's where the danger is. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay. I think this is good. Let's summarize what we have and then call it a night. That was a good yield here. Okay. So we had first a set of ideas. Oops, it's going all the way up here. First, a set of ideas which had to do with taking feedback from your own expressions of thinking bad thoughts, right? So if you are thinking bad thoughts, which again, every person has thoughts, and when I say bad thoughts, I mean like either to harm someone or to do something bad, whatever it is. So everyone has thoughts like that, right? But you got to watch yourself, because first of all, the decision to lean into them, as Ayala was saying, of closing your eyes to concentrate or fantasize or having some sort of physical manifestation, that transfers it from being a purely mental thing to something bodily, and also invest mental energy and psychic energy into it. So that's one level of warning. Okay, so be wary of that because that could give it more power. Second level is if you do something like purse your lips or clench your fist or like grit your teeth or stiffen your neck. So you are acting on it, and the acting on it is also making it more real and giving it power and solidifying it and anchoring you in it. And if you manifest it in a way that someone else notices, now you're actually bringing it into the real world where it can have consequences. And so you need to be looking out for your symbols like that, not symbols, for symptoms like this, and watching yourself, because that's how you know when this thing might be getting out of control. And so don't tell yourself, well, I didn't fully act on it. No, it doesn't need a full act. Even a subtle act is enough to like be of concern. Okay, that was the ideas that Ariel, and Isaiah gave. Okay, so then my dad had this idea, which we didn't really develop, which is that when you are around someone who's evil, don't just be on the lookout for the overt, blatant acts of evil. Look for the subtle signs that show evil intent. My idea was that it's expressing a false feeling that wicked people have, which is that they are so caught up in their own egotistical worldview that they feel as though just plotting the evil and then communicating it, part of them feels as though they've already a mission accomplished, and that is useful because that's how you could bring them down. You could take advantage of that feeling that they've already gotten away with it, and you can exploit that to your advantage to bring them down. Then we had Metzudas David's idea, which is about someone who speaks Lashon Hara, that the person who speaks Lashon Hara feels that if they don't actually say the words, then it's not really bad. But in truth, the act of Lashon Hara is a corrosive force for yourself. If you think the thoughts and you communicate it in any way, that is a complete act of Lashon Hara. And then all of the statements of Chazal and the Torah and Mishlei about people who speak Lashon Hara will apply to you. And then Rבינו Yona we didn't figure out. And then the Rav Sheshes ben Yitzchak has this idea about advice, not closing your eyes, but advising, and saying that don't take advice from degenerate people because the advice is corrupted by the advisor. And then we asked what about learning from everyone? We say you should learn from everyone, and that's possible and good. But we said, yeah, there's a difference between knowledge and advice. Either because from the side of the recipient, like Ayala was saying, that when you're in a position where you need advice, you're going to be less critical and you're going to be eager to get help. So you're not going to like pay attention as much and you'll seize on it without investigating this way. Or like Isaiah and I wanted to say, which is that when a corrupt person shows you knowledge, they're not invested in it and they can like compartmentalize. But when they're advising you, they're putting themselves in your shoes and thinking about what they would do. So it's much easier for that corruptness to like get at them. Okay, this is a nice yield, nice haul. Okay, so Bli Neder next week we should be on, and we are how many pasukim from the end of the chapter? Not that we're counting. 1, 2, 3. 3 pasukim, and then we get to the end of the chapter here. So even hopefully we finish this before Shavuos, and then we'll see what we do after that. We go to the next chapter. Probably go into the next chapter. Yeah. Okay. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.